I just watched Mika Brzeezinski's interview of Joe Biden on MSNBC's Morning Joe, and I've got to tell you, if she was trying to destroy Joe Biden, mission virtually accomplished. Viva Frei, Montreal litigator turned YouTuber. If you are extremely perceptive, you might notice that I'm shooting this vlog towards the end of the day, hence the lighting is not all that good. My wife had the 3 kids out of the house this morning, and I spent the day mopping the floors, vacuuming the house. You should have seen the color of the water in the mop bucket. It was disgusting. Now, for those of you who may not watch MSNBC like myself, you might nonetheless have heard of the fact that Mika Brzeezinski just did an interview, or what I might call a cross-examination of Joe Biden on Morning Joe on their morning show. The interview didn't go that well for Joe Biden. For those of you who may not know, Joe Biden is being accused of sexual assault by a former staffer named Tara Reid, an incident that dates back to the 1990s. Now, I don't know what Mika's objective was with the interview, but it became clear within about 30 seconds that she was not there to give him lowball questions. From a legal cross-examining point of view, we can learn a lot from this interview, and I'm going to go through it to bring out some of the highlights. But the manner in which Mika conducted this interview perfectly illustrates that one does not have to come into an examination frothing mad in order to get their point across. On the contrary, setting aside a few convoluted or unnecessarily complicated questions, Mika was methodical and she tore Joe Biden apart. She had good questions that were on point, she pushed back on the evasive answers, and she allowed for the awkward silences that other people might have interrupted because of the fact that they would be so darn awkward. Alright, but enough of the prelude, let's get into the interview.
Okay, let's bring in the apparent Democratic nominee for president, former Vice President Joe Biden. Okay. Joe and Willie will join in just a moment, but at the start, it's just going to be you and me, and I want to get right to the allegation made against you by Tara Reid. Right
off the bat, Mika is implementing a very effective tactic of isolating Joe. It's just going to be her and him. There's going to be nobody else around for distraction, for chatty talk, etc., etc. It is just going to be her and him, and she's going to get right into the uncomfortable questions. And given the nature and subject matter of those questions, it's going to be even more isolating for Joe to be face-to-face with Mika and Mika alone. I don't know if she did it on purpose, but it is an extremely effective tactic to destabilize the person to whom you're asking the questions, all the more so given the subject matter of those questions.
So, the former Senate aide accuses you of sexual assault. Would you please go on the record with the American people? Did you sexually assault Tara Reid?
No, it is not true. I'm saying unequivocally, it never happened. And it didn't. It never happened.
So Mika comes out with the predictable first question, Joe comes out with a predictable, well-rehearsed answer, and if he thought it was going to end there, well, he's got another thing coming for him. But as a litigator who has conducted a lot of depositions, something about these flat-out denials that always raise red flags for me is the use of the term it.
No, it is not true. It never happened. And it didn't. It never happened.
And I'm not saying this to play semantics, I'm saying this to analyze the denial. It never happened. When someone comes out with a flat denial, it never happened, the it becomes a critical word because it can mean something different. It can mean something different for the person asking the question as compared to the person answering the question. So when people want to justify as honest to themselves a dishonest denial, it never happened, they fuzzy what the word it is in their own head so that the it in their head is not the same thing as the it in the question that was asked to them. Digest that, because that is a very important way in which people can justify their own dishonesty to themselves.
Do you remember any types of complaints that she might have made?
I don't remember any type of complaint she may have made. It was 27 years ago. And I don't remember, nor does anyone else that I'm aware of. And the fact is that I don't remember. I don't remember any complaint ever having been made.
As an attorney, I have faced a lot of answers that employ what I consider to be these types of evasive tactics. You start off with a qualified denial, you bring in other issues like the duration of time that has lapsed, and then you bring in other issues like what other people remember.
I don't remember any type of complaint. It was 27 years ago. I don't remember, nor does anyone else that I'm aware of.
It's the old confuse and conquer. It's a pretty straightforward question, and the answer is unnecessarily convoluted.
You were unequivocal, Mr. Vice President, back in 2018 during the Kavanaugh controversy and hearings, and you said that women should be believed. You said this: for a woman to come forward in the glaring lights of focus nationally, you've got to start off with the presumption that at least the essence of what she is talking about is real. Whether or not she forgets the facts, whether or not it's been made worse or better over time. She's going to be going on national television on Sunday. Tara Reid is coming forward in the glaring lights. To use your words, should we not start off with the presumption that the essence of what she's talking about is real? She says you sexually assaulted her.
That is a devastating question. Calm, calculated, well-researched, well-asked, clear, and concise. And there really is no way for Joe Biden to answer this, but let's just see how he's going to answer it nonetheless.
Look, from the very beginning, I've said believing women means taking the woman's claims seriously when she steps forward and then vet it. Look into it. That's true in this case as well. Women have a right to be heard, and the press should rigorously investigate claims they make. I'll always uphold that principle. But in the end, in every case, the truth is what matters. And in this case, the truth is the claims are false.
In my experience, when people start answering a question with look, or let's be honest, or come on, or something to that effect, they are getting ready to mislead you. That being said, in fairness to Biden, he answered that question about as well as anyone could be expected to answer that question, given the things he in fact said in the past.
Is it possible these claims are held in an NDA? Do you have any NDAs that have been signed by women who were employed by you?
There's no NDA signed, and no one's ever signed. I've never asked anybody to sign an NDA. There are no NDAs, period, in my case. None.
My litigator flags are going off. The answer to that question strikes me as being tremendously evasive. Biden starts and then doesn't finish multiple sentences, and it's almost as though he knows that he can't finish the sentence as it started because it would be factually incorrect, and so he has to jump onto another affirmation.
There's no NDA signed, and no one's ever signed. I've never asked anybody to sign an NDA. There are no NDAs, period.
And it ultimately ends with the probably true but ultimately meaningless affirmation, I've never asked anybody to sign an NDA, because that's not how NDAs work. Biden can probably certainly truthfully assert that he has never asked anyone to sign an NDA, because typically he wouldn't be the one to ask anybody to sign an NDA. It would be the lawyers who would do that. So you see that the answer to the otherwise pretty clear question about the NDAs starts off with multiple sentences that never get finished.
There's no NDA signed, and no one's ever signed. I've never asked anybody to sign an NDA.
And finally, an affirmation that is totally irrelevant.
Your Senate documents at the University of Delaware were supposed to go public, and then they were resealed. The access was changed. I know that you were saying any HR complaints could be in the National Archives, but why not reveal your Senate documents that are being held in Delaware? I know there's 1,800 plus boxes, but if she believes and she alleges that the complaints may be hidden there, why not strive for complete transparency? Why was the access to those documents sealed up when they were supposed to be revealed?
This question requires some clarification, because when I first saw the interview, I didn't understand why they were asking questions about documents that would be found at the University of Delaware as opposed to the National Archives. For those of you who may not know, the National Archives is an independent agency tasked with the preservation of government and historical records. So in theory, a lot of documentation as relates to Joe Biden's public service should be found in the National Archives. How does the University of Delaware figure into all of this? Apparently in 2012, Joe Biden donated a slew of records to the University of Delaware, which contained papers and works and documents from his 30 years as a senator. So while Joe Biden did in fact publicly request that the National Archives search for any complaint that relates to Tara Reade in the National Archives, Mika is asking why he doesn't do the same thing for the documents he donated to the University of Delaware. And let's hear his answer.
So, for complete transparency, why not push for the release of any documents with Tara Reade's name on them, whether it's at the University of Delaware or the National Archives?
First of all, let's get this straight. There are no personnel documents. I mean, you can't do that. You wouldn't, for example, if you worked with me or I worked for you and you had my income tax returns, you had my whatever. They're private documents. They're not for the. They don't get put out in the public. So they're not part of the public record. That in fact is that any senator or vice president or president has in their documents. Look, there was one place that she could file the complaint. And that office at the time was, all those records from that office are in the archives, and they're controlled by the Senate. That's where personnel documents would be if they exist. That's where the complaint would be if it exists.
First of all, let's get this straight. As far as I'm concerned, all distractors that are indicative of evasiveness. I am not convinced by the private documents argument as relates to documents that were produced in the context of the senators acting as senator for a state. But above and beyond that, this is a convoluted answer to an otherwise clear question, and it yet again shifts the responsibility, as you can see, onto the Senate. Don't look at the documents at the University of Delaware because those are private documents, and take my word for it, there's nothing there. Look only to the National Archives, but lo and behold, I don't have control over the National Archives. That is the Senate, so I'm calling on them to release the documents. Confusion and diversion galore.
Are women to be believed? Are women to be believed unless it pertains to you?
Look.
Before yet another diversionary look, there's a like to shame the person asking the question for having asked the question. Mika is pushing on legitimate questions, apparent hypocrisy, and she is literally met with a scoff for having the audacity to ask the question. A judgmental scoff and then yet another diversionary look while I give you another convoluted answer.
Look, women are to be believed given the benefit of the doubt. If they come forward and say something that they said happened to them, they should start off with the presumption they're telling the truth. Then you have to look at the circumstances and the facts. And the facts in this case do not exist. They never happened. And there's so many inconsistencies in what has been said in this case. So yes, look at the facts.
If I am cross-examining Joe Biden right now, I'm picking up on a few tells, most notably the blinking.
And the facts in this case do not exist. They never happened. And there's so many inconsistencies in what has been said in this case. So yes, look at the facts.
The blinking to me indicates that Joe Biden is obviously uncomfortable, and he might be uncomfortable just because of the circumstances, or he might be uncomfortable because he's being misleading. And more flags go off for me when Joe Biden invokes the inconsistencies in order to justify his denial. I always get suspicious when someone tries to support their own position by relying on the inconsistencies of someone else's position. Why? Because generally speaking, there are always going to be inconsistencies in someone else's position. And it is yet another diversionary tactic in that one can justify their own dishonesty not by making false statements themselves, but by relying on the inconsistencies of the other party. And so the person doesn't even have to lie or make untruthful statements themselves. All they can say is, look, it has to be false because there are so many inconsistencies in that person's story. As far as I am concerned, it is a weak diversionary and above all else, evasive denial.
Are you absolutely positive there is no record of any complaint by Tara Reade against you?
I am absolutely positive that no one that I'm aware of ever has been made aware of any complaint, a formal complaint made by or a complaint by Tara Reade against me at the time this allegedly happened 27 years ago, or until I announced for I guess it was in April or May of this year. I know of no one who's aware that any complaint was made.
Are you absolutely positive there's no record of any complaint of Tara Reade against you? Pretty clear question. Count the number of qualifiers in that answer.
I am absolutely positive that no one that I'm aware of ever has been made aware of any complaint, a formal complaint made by or a complaint by Tara Reade against me at the time this allegedly happened 27 years ago, or until I announced for I guess it was in April or May of this year.
I know of no one who is aware that any complaint was made. That doesn't even answer the question. The question was about his knowledge of the existence of a complaint, not his knowledge of other people's knowledge of the existence of a complaint. It is a typical evasive answer in that it is an answer to a question that wasn't asked.
Do you agree with the reporting that those records were supposed to be revealed to the public and then they were resealed for a longer period of time until after you leave, quote, public life? And if you agree with that, if that's what happened, why did that happen?
We'll get to Biden's answer in a question, but something that's becoming abundantly clear is that Mika is getting angry with Joe Biden. She is getting personally turned off by Joe Biden, as can be seen by her demeanor right now. But above and beyond that, I have a bit of a problem with this question in that it is what I call a double-layered question. It's a double-layered question in that it asks one question and then asks another question on that first question without allowing the person to answer the question as relates to the first question. And if my description of that question is confusing, it's because the question is confusing itself. The question should have been broken down into two discrete questions. Do you agree that the documents which were supposed to be released this year are no longer going to be released this year and are going to be withheld from the public for a longer period of time? Let Biden answer the question, and depending on the answer to that question, then ask the second question, why did that happen? As phrased, the question is too convoluted and is going to allow for evasiveness just by virtue of the way the question was asked.
Because, look.
He did it again. Because, look, I am getting ready to mislead you.
Because, look, The fact is that there's a lot of things of speeches I've made, positions I've taken, interviews that I did overseas with people, all of those things relating to my job. And the idea that they would all be made public, and the fact while I was running for public office, they could be really taken out of context. The papers are position papers. They are documents that existed, and that when for example, when I met with Putin or when I met with whomever, and all of that to be fodder in a campaign at this time, I don't know of anybody who's done anything like that.
The general public will come to their own conclusions as to the legitimacy of that answer. I don't want those documents becoming public because they might be used against me as I'm running for president. And then we go to the classic diversionary tactic of, I don't know anybody else who's done that, as if to shift the burden of responsibility from him onto other people who are not being asked that question.
There is nothing. They wouldn't, they're not there. And if it's, I don't understand the point you're trying to make.
Mika is asking why you don't allow people to search for Tara Reade's name. The answer is because there's nothing there. Well, then it should be an easy question to answer in that go search for it because there's going to be nothing there. Something to bear in mind, whenever anybody says something like that to somebody else, I don't know what the point you're trying to make is. That is a judgmental question that is attempting to shame the person asking the question into not asking the question. If it were a deposition, I would respond, it doesn't matter if you understand the point I'm trying to make, just answer the question because it's a pretty clear question. Will you authorize a search in the documents you donated to the University of Delaware for anything relating to Tara Reade? Yes or no? If, as you say, there are no documents there, then it should be a very easy question to answer. Yes, go, you'll find nothing. But that is not the answer that Joe Biden gives.
I'm just talking about her name, not anybody else in those records. A search for that. Nothing classified with the president or anybody else. I'm just asking, why not do a search for Tara Reade's name in the University of Delaware records?
Look, I mean, who does that search?
That is one of the most awkward silences I have ever seen, and I am glad Mika allowed it to happen and didn't feel pressure to interrupt that awkward silence with another follow-up question. It took discipline to allow it to happen, and oftentimes these awkward silences are the most telling. In fact, if this were a deposition, my next question would have been, why on earth is it taking you so long to answer this question?
In the University of Delaware records.
Look, I mean, who does that search?
Yet another diversionary look, I'm about to mislead you, and who does that search? That is a different explanation than what you gave previously. Who does that search is probably the most academic aspect of that search. If there's nothing to find, then it should make no difference who does that search. And it's the classic evasive moving target. Go to the National Archives because that is the only place documents can be. Trust me. No need to look in the University of Delaware documents. There's nothing there. Trust me. And we can't have people look where I'm telling you there are no documents because who would do the search?
The University of Delaware, perhaps you set up a commission that can do it. I don't know. Whatever is the fairest way to create the most transparency.
Well, look, Mika.
This evasive look, Mika, is the most telling of the interview. Biden says, look, Mika, and when he does that, he is again trying to make her feel ashamed for asking the questions. He's like saying, look, we're friends. Why are you asking me this question? Leave it alone already.
She said she filed a report. She has her employment records still. She said she refiled a report with the only office that would have a report in the United States Senate at the time. If the report was ever filed, it was filed there. Period.
Now, this is a very long-winded answer as to why he would not allow for a specific search for Tara Reade's names in the documents he donated to the University of Delaware. Long and convoluted, which in my experience means evasive. But she is not losing her temper, she's not losing her cool, she's not getting belligerent with Joe Biden, she is just letting his answers sit there in the ether for the appreciation of the world. And in doing that, she is actually doing a greater service than if she were to get aggressive with Joe Biden. In fact, what makes this interview so effective and so devastating for Joe Biden is that Mika asks the questions and just lets Joe Biden sink himself. The questions were good, they were on point, and they were methodical, and above and beyond asking good questions on point in a methodical manner, what Mika did best is allow Joe Biden to answer. She didn't interrupt, she didn't put Joe Biden on the defensive by getting aggressive, she just let Joe Biden answer. And oddly enough, that is a lesson that a lot of litigation attorneys need to learn when going into examinations. You could have the most relevant, on-point questions, but if you don't allow the witness to answer, they are useless. Here, Mika asked the questions, she allowed Joe Biden to answer those questions, and I think the world is going to judge Joe Biden by those answers. I have just shed whatever insight I can into what I think of those answers. And while some people might consider this analysis to be partisan in that it has to be pro-Trump because it's critical of Joe Biden, others might think that it is in fact pro-Democratic Party because it's illustrating the fact that they need a more viable candidate to actually beat Trump in 2020, while others might just accept it for what it is, my analysis based on my experience with whatever insights I think I can add to the situation. If you like my videos and you like my content, please be sure to like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, drop a comment in the comment section below because it feeds the algorithm. If you want to support the channel, all of the support links are in the pinned comment, but above all else, take care of yourselves, stay well, stay healthy, and now you know your vlog. Peace out.